most Nazi-like activities I've seen, and the Nazis, in my view, were thugs that shook people down, did a lot of really bad things.
But they did good things, too. We're going to stop dissing the Nazis all the time.
That's Kanye West. Kanye West has gone full avowed Nazi. We're going to talk about what that means, exactly what he said, and listen to a few other clips that give us some clues about his personality, where it is right now, and what led him to this position in his life. But first, let's talk about the root of anti-Semitism, where this came from, why it's so pervasive. Why are people so obsessed with Jews? I actually talked about this on my Unfiltered YouTube channel the other day, so I'm going to insert a clip right here explaining this document called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. If you've heard this before, skip forward 6 minutes. I'll also put a timestamp right here for where you can skip to. Back in World War II, Hitler used every opportunity he could to whip people into a blood frenzy, to make them absolutely hate the Jewish people. And one of the methods that he used to get people whipped into that blood frenzy was claiming that he found, or that people found, a document on a dead Jewish soldier, okay? And this document was called The Protocols for the Elders of Zion. Now, here's the claim. There were 27 supposed protocols of the Elders of Zion. These protocols of the Elders of Zion were short little things that were, I don't know, like they were like this long. They were like newspaper clippings, basically. And they were descriptions of parts of their plan for world domination. Now, I'm sure I don't even need to say it, but it was a forgery fabricated decades earlier. There was no Jewish soldier that this was found on. There were no elders of Zion, but Hitler mentioned it in Mein Kampf, and then he had these supposed 27 protocols of the elders of Zion printed out on printing presses and passed around to everybody. This is it, right here. If you've never seen this before, it's pretty crazy. The protocols of the elders of Zion were the 27 protocols, but it was compiled into a book called The Protocols of the Meetings of the Learned Elders of Zion in 1902. So these things originate from about 1902, and I believe that the book was compiled in 1905 originally by this one guy. As far as we can tell, we don't know exactly who forged this stuff, but it was passed around heavily by the precursor to the KGB called the Okhrana. It was the Tsarist Russian KGB, basically. It contains basically every conspiracy theory in existence. The conspiracy theory that Jews eat babies or that they drink the blood of children, that's from protocols of the elders of Zion. The idea that they control the big banks and the media and all of the other stuff, protocols of the elders of Zion. It's from this document right here. The conspiracy theory that they try to cancel people that they don't like, cancel culture, protocols of the elders of Zion. It's all from this. The idea that Marxism and Darwinism are evil and that they're trying to use it to destroy society, protocols of the elders of Zion. It's all from this. Every conspiracy theory in the past 100 years that you can think of. The Great Replacement, where they're trying to bring in other groups of immigrants to destroy our culture and to outweigh votes and things like that. Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The conspiracy theory that Jewish people are trying to enslave the world or whatever other thing, it's all from this book. Dead serious. This is where pretty much all anti-Semitism stems from, or, well, I guess that's not exactly accurate. This is a compilation of all anti-Semitism from the past 1,000 years. It was all put into a book right here, and it was passed around Nazi Germany. And, get this, it was passed around the Middle East by the KGB in the 20th century, passed around in Iran and Saudi Arabia and all of the other Middle Eastern countries in that area, Egypt and all of them. by the KGB to make the Middle East hate Israel even more. That's at least part of the reason why Iran absolutely hates Israel and why they're Holocaust deniers. Or not Iran necessarily, but the leadership in Iran. That's why they're like that. Because the KGB passed these conspiracy theories around over the past 100 years. So, anyways, like I said, there are 27 of these protocols of the Elders of Zion, and they were all compiled over the course of a couple of years from newspaper clippings and stuff. They originated from a book, a French satire book. All of the plans for world domination in this all were forged from this French satire book written in 1854 that didn't even mention Jews. But they found this book, they copied it word for word. 80% of the protocols for the Elders of Zion are forged from this 1854 French book. They forged it and printed it in newspaper clippings, and then in, I think, 1905, this guy compiled it all into this book, and then the KGB and the Okhrana and Hitler himself printed it out and passed it around to everybody they possibly could. Said it was being censored and the whole 9 yards. So this is actually originally from the FBI vaults. You can find it on the FBI website, along with letters from people saying that it was sent to them in the mail. The FBI tracked down 2 or 3 printing presses that were printing copies of it in the 1970s. Absolutely fascinating. Not that it's illegal to pass out, but, when propaganda like this spreads, they want to at least keep track of it. So really fascinating to look at the history of it. Point is, this is where all anti-Semitism originates nowadays. This is where all conspiracy theories originate nowadays. This is a compilation of all of the conspiracy theories, or many of them, that were said about the Jewish people over the past 1,000 years. And it's fascinating to get a glimpse into where all of it came from, or where it's all going. So anyways, if you are wondering, that is where anti-Semitism comes from in modern times. Thanks, past me. Appreciate that. So anyways, now that we know where anti-Semitism comes from, let's talk a little bit about what that anti-Semitism led to in World War II. Most people go through classes, history classes talking about World War II and the things that happened, but a lot of stuff is left out of those classes because just hearing what took place, just hearing it, could cause PTSD for some people. You'll think it didn't affect you that deeply. You won't think much of it. You'll feel bad for the people who were victim to this stuff, but you'll kind of move on with your life. And before you know it, weeks turn into months, turn into years. You're feeling depressed and down. You jump at the sound of loud pops and things like that because it is so deeply evil what happened. Now, there's a book called Night. It was written by a guy named Elie Wiesel, I believe is his name. And I actually read that book today. He was the victim of the Holocaust. He was actually shuttled to Auschwitz, the actual concentration camp, Auschwitz, with his dad. And his mom and sister were taken away and killed, and that was the end of it. And he details his experience there. He was given the Nobel Peace Prize, I think in 1986 or something like that, and he gave a speech in 1986. I just wanted to read a couple sentences from his Nobel Peace Prize speech. Listen to what he said. A young Jewish boy discovered the kingdom of night. I remember his bewilderment. I remember his anguish. It all happened so fast. The ghetto, the deportation, the sealed cattle car, the fiery altar upon which the history of our people and the future of mankind were meant to be sacrificed. I remember, he asked his father, can this be true? This is the 20th century, not the Middle Ages. Who would allow such crimes to be committed? How could the world remain silent? And now the boy is turning to me. Tell me, he asks, what have you done with my future? What have you done with your life? And I tell him that I've tried. that I've tried to keep memory alive, that I've tried to fight those who would forget. Because if we forget, we are guilty. We are accomplices. So let's not forget. Let's talk about what happened. I'm about to tell you a real story of something that really happened. Imagine you are hanging out with your family members. You live in Hungary, say, or Poland or something. You're hanging out one night, and the police knock on your door. You open the door, and they order your mom and your dad and your brother and your sister and you out into the street. They order you all to grab a rope. Nobody knows what's happening. You find yourself accompanied by every other Jewish person in the town. You're all holding the rope, and they march you to the middle of a forest, 5 kilometers away. And they force you to dig a hole, a deep hole. You can see the soldiers drinking heavily and affixing bayonets to the end of their guns. They tell everybody to line up along the hole. Your mom and your dad are first. Your uncles, your best friend growing up, fall backwards into the hole. You're lined up next where they once stood. A soldier aims at your face, pulls the trigger, but at the last second pushes the gun out of the way and clips your leg. You fall in on top of your dead parents, your dead baby sister, your dead friend. You're still alive with a wounded leg. Another group lines up where you stood. They pull the triggers, and now your other friends fall dead on top of you. You crawl out of the hole after all the soldiers are drunk and have left, and try to crawl into a town that is less than welcoming because everybody thinks that you are an evil monster that practices black magic. You're an evil monster that put a curse on the town, thanks to the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was passed around your town earlier that year. That is a real story that really happened. Now, Elie Wiesel, the person I mentioned earlier, got the Nobel Prize. That didn't happen to him. Instead of being rounded up, walked into a forest, and lined up along a hole where his friends and family were shot, they were taken to boxcars and shipped into Auschwitz, a concentration camp. At that concentration camp, people lined up in front of Nazi doctors, Nazi administrators of various sorts. This guy specifically lined up in front of a famous Nazi doctor, Mengele, I think was his name, and they would pick left or right. If they picked left, you got to live and work in a camp, working on, a factory of some sort, producing goods or something for the war effort. If they picked right, it was to the crematorium. The people on the left had to work under the constant threat of the chimney that was constantly pushing out smoke of their dead loved ones. How did it get to that point? How did this happen? We're going to talk more about Kanye. I only got 12 seconds in, but I want to make a real clear point about what Kanye is endorsing right now. Okay, I've played this clip before in full. There's a video on my main channel with the full breakdown of this entire 30-minute clip or 22-minute clip. I'm not going to play the full thing right now. I'm just going to play the first 3 minutes of it or something. But I want you guys to understand how the Nazis got to where they were. This was produced in, I believe, 1947, which is 2 years after the war ended. It's called Don't Be a Sucker.
I want to give you the truth, folks. The truth about America. I know you've got a lot of questions. You want to know why you're not getting the breaks you deserve. Well, I'm not a politician, but I've made it my business to study these things, and I happen to know the facts. Now, friends, I'm just an average American. But I'm an American, and some of the things I see in this country of ours make my blood boil. I see people with foreign accents making all the money. I see Negroes holding jobs that belong to me and you. Now I ask you, if we allow this thing to go on, what's going to become of us real Americans?
I've heard this kind of talk before, but I never expected to hear it in America.
Is any of this sounding familiar? He's talking about immigrants taking jobs from people and the lower forms of people in America that are sucking off of the system and making things worse for you. Your life sucks, and the reason is immigrants, Negroes, insert blank here. It's all somebody else's fault. Is this sounding familiar?
This fellow seems to know what he's talking about.
Yes, he knows all right.
What's the answer? What are we real Americans going to do about it? You'll find it right here in this little pamphlet. The truth about Negroes and foreigners. The truth about the Catholic Church. Now, friends, these books are free. Paid for by real Americans who want others to know the truth.
Excuse me, young man, but are you actually going to read that stuff?
Sure, why not? You heard what he said, didn't you?
Yes, I heard. But do you believe in that kind of talk?
I don't know, makes pretty good sense to me.
I'm speaking to you as an American. And I tell you, friends, we'll never be able to call this country our own until it's a country without. Without what? Yeah, without what? Without Negroes. Without alien foreigners. Without Catholics. Without Freemasons. You know these people...
What's wrong with the Masons? I'm a Mason. Hey, that fella's talking about me.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
This all sounds super familiar, right? Again, this was produced in 1947, 2 years after World War II ended. Now, this guy in the hat here goes on to describe what it was like in Germany during Hitler's reign, 1932, right before Hitler took power. He goes into a flashback of what it was like to be in Germany at the time. Listen to this piece.
I saw it first in Berlin in 1932. 5 young men that I knew were standing in the crowd listening to the Nazi speaker. Eric was a Catholic. Anton, a student of mine, was a Jew. Heinrich owned a small hardware store. Karl was a farmer. And Hans was an unemployed metal worker.
To all true Aryan Germans, I say it is time you inherited the nation which rightfully belongs to you.
At this time in history, Hitler had basically no power. He was just like the party leader of a fringe party that wasn't even that popular. It was maybe 10, 15, maybe 20% support in the country. It was just a National Socialist Party. That's what Nazis stood for at the time, the National Socialist Party. As time went on, we came to find that they're not actually socialists. Matter of fact, the Nazi Party absolutely hated socialists and shipped them off to concentration camps just as readily as they did the Jews. But that's neither here nor there. Listen to this Nazi trying to convince a crowd to support the Nazi Party.
To you alone belongs the glorious destiny of the greater Germany. The Nazi Party will provide land for the farmer, work for the worker, and profits for the small businessman. Who is getting these things now? The Jew. The Jew who has stolen our nation and our birthright.
Now, remember what I said earlier about the Protocols of the Elders of Zion? That was passed out by Hitler. It was printed and given to everybody on a street corner. It was mentioned directly in Mein Kampf. He spread it around to demonize the Jews, to make them into the enemy, to point a finger at them and blame them for all the problems. Similarly, well, hell, exactly the same way that Trump demonizes immigrants for all of America's problems, right?
Who makes all the money and takes all our jobs? The Jew! He must be shunned. He must be ostracized. He must be eliminated. And the Catholics. We don't want our great nation run by a foreign church. We Germans will know what to do with these people when the time comes. They and their faith must be destroyed. Then there are the Freemasons. In Germany, we have no place for secret societies. There will be only one society, and that is the Nazi Party. There will be no secrecy about that in the new greater Germany.
One by one, he attacked each minority and he split them off one from the other. These men were all fellow Germans when they came here today. Now they were split into rival groups, suspicious of each other, hating each other. They were being swindled, all of them. But the man who was really being fooled was Hans. He was pure German, according to Nazi standards. To him they promised everything, and he fell for it.
So that is a movie from 1947. Is any of this sounding familiar at all? Now, I don't know if Kanye knows the history behind the Nazi Party or the horrific, fucked up things that they did. I don't know if he knows the history of Hitler and the pure, unadulterated hate that he brought to the world. I don't know if he knows those things. But I don't really care, honestly. If you support or endorse a system that did the things that we just listened to, that walked people into a forest, lined them up with their friends and family, and pulled a trigger after making them dig their own graves, you are dead to me. You know, the sad part is the stuff that people experienced at that time, I mean, the things that the Jews experienced during that era were so horrific. Even the perpetrators, even the Nazi soldiers that were pulling the triggers, couldn't handle it. They believe in the cause to the death, do absolutely anything for Hitler, hated the Jews just as much as the next guy at the time in Germany. But strangely, over the months, they developed PTSD. They started getting stomach problems. They started freaking out. They stopped being able to handle the situation as easily, even the most die-hardiest of believers. Because human beings aren't supposed to experience the things that they went through, the things that the Jews went through. And human beings are not supposed to do the things that the Nazis did to the Jews. It really fucks your head up to experience things like that. I can't go any deeper than that without really messing with people's heads. So I'm just going to leave it there. And if you want to hear more about how all of this played out, then read the book Night by Elie Wiesel, a story of a guy that was actually there. Unlike the story I told earlier where they walked him into the forest, had him dig their own graves, and then pulled the triggers, Elie Wiesel lived in Hungary. The police came to his door, picked up his dad and his whole family, put them in boxcars, and drove them to Auschwitz. And he barely survived those camps. His dad did not. His mom and his sister were split off from them, and he never saw them again. They died too. That is what Kanye West is endorsing. And by the by, he does go by Ye now. I'm not going to use that name. I suspect he's trying to separate his current personality, his Nazi-supporting stuff, from his brand to try to diminish the impact that his beliefs may have on his brand, and I'm not going to give him that opportunity. Even if that's not what he's doing, I'm not going to afford him the respect of protecting his old brand. So I'm calling him Kanye. So anyway, with all of that background in mind, let's talk about the things that Kanye West had to say recently. He went on Alex Jones's program. I don't know if you guys were aware of this. Alex Jones is bizarre in his own right, but apparently the things that Kanye said was too bizarre even for Alex Jones of all people. Check this one out.
You're not Hitler. You're not a Nazi. You don't deserve to be called that and demonized.
Well, I see good things about Hitler also. I love everyone, and Jewish people are not going to tell me you can love, us, and you can love what we're doing to you with the contracts, and you can love what we're pushing with the pornography. But this guy that invented highways, invented the very microphone that I use as a musician, you can't say out loud that this person ever did anything good.
Okay, first of all, Hitler did not invent highways. That was actually a program that was created by, I think, the Social Democrats, the other government that was in control of Germany before Hitler came along. That was a program started by them, and Hitler just picked it up and continued it. Yeah, that was good for Germany, but Hitler didn't come up with it, so. And as far as microphones go, did Hitler invent microphones? I didn't hear a word about this. I know for a fact that Hitler did not invent microphones or highways. Now, did his administration invent microphones? I I don't know. I'm sure that somebody else would have come along and invented it if he hadn't. But okay. And the other thing Kanye mentioned there, you can't say anything good about him. Sure you can. You can say all kinds of good things about him. This is like when somebody robs a bank, right? And they're on trial and they're standing in front of the judge and they're determining whether or not he's going to go to jail. And he's like, oh, you would bring that up where I robbed a bank. You didn't talk about when I brought my mom a birthday present, though. Why the would we talk about you bringing your mom a birthday present? It's irrelevant in light of the fact that you just robbed a bank. I don't care what other good things Hitler had to say or do. I really don't care. You know what I care about? The fact that he killed a bunch of people, that he endorsed doing so. That's what I care about. We shouldn't be saying anything good about him. Okay, I guess he may have invented the microphone. Hypothetically speaking, let's say he did. Great. Okay, fine. He's a mass murderer. I could not possibly care less if he invented the microphone.
Never did anything good, and I'm done with that. I'm done with the classifications. Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table.
Hitler did so many bad things. There is literally nothing that he could have done for humanity that would have outweighed the evil that he did. There's no point in even talking about it. Somebody else would have come along and done it. He did so much damage to the world that he doesn't deserve to be remembered fondly in any way, shape, or form. And the fact that Kanye is defending that and endorsing that and trying to get people to view him positively should tell you all you need to know about the guy. We should be completely done with Kanye. Completely done. Now, before we listen to the last section there, I want to preface this by saying he talks the entire time, the whole 3 hours, about how he hates Jews. And then interspersed in there every now and then, he says he loves everybody, including Hitler. So it's almost like he's trying to defend himself or get a jump on the argument by saying he doesn't hate anybody. There's no hate in his heart, even though he just spent the past 45 minutes talking about how much he hates Jews. But that whole argument that he lays down is blown to pieces with this next thing that he said. Listen to this.
Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
Especially Hitler. It's like if he's trying to maintain the argument that he loves everybody, that there's no hate in his heart, you could at least leave the word especially out of that sentence. Kanye West is evil. Check this one out. Again, this all happened on December 1st, this interview with Alex Jones. Listen to this next one.
Seriously, I've really studied a lot of history. Plus, I had family that was there. And so, I mean, I don't think Hitler was a good guy. I get the Hugo Boss uniforms, amazing. But, I mean, just because you're in love with the design, you're a designer, can we just kind of say, you like the uniforms? But
dude, Alex Jones is trying so hard to give Kanye West an out. He is doing everything he can. I'm sorry, man. Kanye is just a Nazi. He's a Nazi. I've heard a lot of names floating around for him. Bladoff, Blitler. There are a lot of different names for him. I'm fond of all of them, but bottom line is he's a Nazi.
you like the uniforms, but that's about it.
The uniforms are terrible, FYI.
But that's about it.
There's a lot of things that I love about Hitler. A lot of things. Hey, Netton, what did you think about that, Netton?
Yeah, he pulled this little net out and he's been kind of using it as a puppet for Netanyahu, which is the current leader of Israel. He really does not like Netanyahu or any of the others. I don't really like Netanyahu either. He's a far-right extremist who's hurt a lot of people, but including many Palestinians. But that's a discussion for another day. The point is, he really doesn't like Netanyahu. I guess Netanyahu called out Donald Trump for eating dinner with Kanye or something like that. This is his impression of Netanyahu while holding up the net, apparently.
This is insane. You are an insane person.
You can kind of see it leaking through a little bit here, if you will, but Kanye West is most definitely completely detached from reality at this point. Completely. And I'll show you exactly what I mean in a second. Listen to this next clip from Alex Jones's show.
I don't really care that much about Hitler. I love him. Seems like
you just do it as a way to troll.
Yeah, again, he's trying to give him an out, okay? Alex Jones is doing everything he can to give Kanye West the out that he so desperately needs?
No, he seems like a cool guy. It's like he it's
You hear this fake laugh from Alex Jones. It's like he's testing out this laugh to try to pretend that Kanye really is trolling. He's not trolling. How can it get any clearer? Kanye West loves Nazis, hates Jews, and wants to be like Hitler. Believe them when they tell you who they are.
like he had a really cool outfit and stuff, and he was a really good architect. And
No, he wasn't. He didn't do any of that shit. What is he even talking about? He had other people doing this stuff for him. Probably had somebody dressing him in the morning.
So you're in love with the look of it.
And
Another out he's trying to give him.
he didn't kill 6 million Jews. That's just like factually incorrect.
Guys, get the Ronald Reagan clip.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that he brought up. This is Holocaust denialism. Let me explain why he says that. He says it's factually incorrect. No, actually, there's some controversy that Holocaust deniers like to bring up about how many people died in the Holocaust, as if it matters. There was a period of time in the very beginning of, the 1930s, early 1930s, where the Nazis were standing on street corners screaming about, the Jews and how they were the source of all of their problems and all that other stuff. Time passes and things start to get to a boil. Hitler takes power, and finally there was a straw that broke the camel's back, basically. I don't remember what year it was. 1937, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, Hitler was terribly mistreating the Jews intentionally, shuttling them into ghettos and taking away their wealth and banning them from leaving the ghettos and stuff like that. Things got to a fever pitch, and a Jewish person attacked a diplomat of some sort, a German diplomat. I don't remember who it was. And Hitler used that as the catalyst, the premise for what came next, which is colloquially known as the Jew hunt. Hitler ordered all Jews to be attacked from that point. They were already cordoned off into ghettos, so it was a pretty simple task of sending police into those ghettos to do something about it, to take them out. Not for nothing, but Nick Fuentes, Kanye West's friend that he brought on Alex Jones, has called for that exact thing for the black community. He has called for the military to go into black ghettos and open fire.
9 in 10 blacks vote for Democrats. Why do they do that? God only knows. Why do they play the knockout game? Why do they punch white people in the street for no reason? Why do they rob 5 7-Elevens in 30 minutes? Why do they walk around with their pants around their ankles? I don't know. I'm not black. So it's not my experience. It's unexplainable. But this is what they do. Okay, this is how they are. Just send the military in. Do what must be done. Send the military into these black neighborhoods. Make the streets safe. They'll complain about it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're never going to vote for us.
So in 1937, that's when the Jew hunt started. And Hitler came to realize that the Jew hunt was moving entirely too slowly. It was not moving as quickly as he wanted, so he came up with a new solution. He also recognized that not only was it moving too slowly for him, he recognized that it was really messing people's heads up, even his soldiers. You're not supposed to do that to a human being, especially not regularly. So instead of going on the Jew hunt, sending them into the ghettos and bringing them out and lining them up in ditches and stuff, Hitler decided to find the people who seemed to be most capable of reliably and consistently taking people out without any ill effects, i.e., people who have some kind of sociopathy or psychopathy, who don't seem to have any form of empathy or feelings of any sort. He promoted them to, some high up position in concentration camps. He would build these gigantic buildings, these work camps, with crematoriums, as I talked about earlier, and the people that showed the least amount of emotional fallout from what they were doing were hired to work in these crematoriums to do it on a mass scale. So in 1937 is when the Jew hunt started, I believe. 1942 is when the official concentration camps opened. So in January 1942, 25% of the Jews who would ultimately die in World War II were dead. In December 1942, 75% of the Jews that would ultimately die in World War II were dead. So the vast majority of the people who were going to be victims of this whole thing died in 1942. That's when the mass campaign started. This guy, Elie Wiesel, was brought into a concentration camp, I believe 1943 or 1944, Auschwitz, until his camp was liberated by Americans. An American tank rolled up and freed everybody eventually in 1945 after the war ended. It was one of the very last ones to be freed, the one that he was in at the time. He moved to different places. The point that I'm laboriously trying to get to here, I was responding to Kanye's thing, what he just said.
6 million Jews, that's just like factually incorrect.
6 million Jews didn't really die. The Auschwitz Memorial had a plaque, still has a plaque, I think, that has changed the estimates for how many people died there over the years. Like originally, I think the estimate said 4 million, and then it changed to like 2 million, then 980,000 or something like that. We didn't have computer records at the time. We didn't have any idea exactly how many people died there. We had to sift through records and look through like those grave sites and do math to figure out like what their standard day was like and calculate all that stuff out and everything to get an idea of how many people died at these camps. We've gotten a lot better at estimating, and we've gotten a lot more information about the time period over the years. So the Auschwitz Memorial plaque has changed as we got new information, more detailed information about how many people went through there and who died and all of that other stuff. That is the basis for their claims that 6 million Jews did not die in World War II. That is actually factually incorrect, what he said. 6 million Jews did die in World War II. We suspect. But guess what? Lots of times people were drunk when they were opening fire like that. The Nazis had to be drunk practically 24/7 to get through a task like that. And they had a set of volunteers that were doing a lot of the shooting too. Hiwis is what they called them. Again, Hiwis were drunk more often than not because it's a deeply disturbing, evil, wrong thing to have to go through, to do in the first place. Not for nothing, but 20% of German soldiers, of policemen, of the military refused to fire upon anybody, and they were reassigned to a different workforce or a different task or whatever else. But that's still pretty high. 80% of people were willing to fire upon others. It's disturbing stuff. It's a disturbing time. I just really want to drill this home, what kind of an evil human being Kanye West is. I want everybody to fully understand exactly what's happening in front of us right now. This is unforgivable. Unforgivable. The point is, Kanye West is not only a Holocaust denier, he thinks Hitler didn't go far enough, and he wanted to see more of it.
That's just like factually incorrect.
Guys, get the Ronald Reagan clip they showed me yesterday. Sorry, go ahead. Ronald Reagan said that too. Well, I think Hitler did target and kill some people. So I think,
I think Obama killed Palestinians.
No, I hear you. Here's where I think the frustration is. And Nick, you can comment.
I'm so blown away that Alex Jones is the voice of reason in this situation.
And Obama was not the first black president. He was another Jewish president.
Okay, that is a complicated thing I don't want to get into right now. But basically, Kanye West is a form of black Israelite or holds some black Israelite views, which basically involve the claim that Kanye West or the black community in general are the real Jews, and the ones that are currently claiming to be Jews are imposters. It's a deeply anti-Semitic claim. Black Israelites are anti-Semitic, and so is the Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam is not Islam or Muslim. They're practically completely unrelated. It's a little cult that sprung from Christianity and Islam both. It's run by Louis Farrakhan currently. Malcolm X was a member of the Nation of Islam up until the last year that he was alive. Then he was assassinated after denouncing them. I don't think it was that, as far as I know. I mean, maybe it was, but I have no reason to believe that Nation of Islam was the group that killed Malcolm X. That's another totally different story, unrelated. Anyways, yeah, this is a black Israelite claim that Kanye's laying on us right now. I don't know who brought him to this point, but somebody in the Nation of Islam or the black Israelites has Kanye's ear. Do you think this is bad? The leader of the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, has said the exact same things that Kanye is saying right now. He is a deeply evil human being, too.
Americans are tired of hearing that we're Hitler and that we did bad things when we defeated Hitler. And that's my biggest beef.
Let's not say his name anymore. Only say Christ's name moving forward.
I agree.
Like
I'm tired of hearing I'm a Nazi. I'm really, because I'm not. But I think by them falsely accusing people, some people are going to become Nazis.
I am. Now what? I am.
You're
now
what?
Kanye West claims the title of Nazi. This isn't, a left-winger nutcase saying everybody's Nazis or whatever. This is hearing the words coming out of this guy's mouth and acknowledging that he believes that he is a Nazi. He believes in Nazi ideology. How does it get clearer than this? Okay, so now he's moving off of just pure unadulterated anti-Semitism, and he's getting into some really weird religious beliefs. I mean, it's still anti-Semitism, but oh my God, listen to some of these weird beliefs that the dude's got here.
I'm not a person that's going to say, hey, I agree with everything. There's things that I said today that you guys don't agree with because you're not in the same place or in the same position in your walk that I'm at. I'm in a position where I love the person the doctor that had plastic surgery on my mom. I always have been in a way where it's...
Okay, now here's the interesting thing. This is some deep lore for you. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Kanye West's mom, her name was Donda. If you know anything about Kanye West, he named his school. He has a school that he created, a private school. He named his school after his mom, Donda. And he also named one of his albums after her. Well, here's where it gets interesting. His mom actually died from plastic surgery and was the basis for a law being pushed through that I forget what it is. It's like it's the Donda West law or something like that. The law basically says you have to have a physical to determine if you are physically healthy enough to get plastic surgery before having the surgery. She basically died under the knife because she wasn't physically healthy enough to go under anesthesia or something like that. And that could have been prevented if they had just done a basic physical on her before, giving her the plastic surgery. So anyways, apparently Kanye West believes that his mom was sacrificed or something. Keep listening to this.
You said your mother was sacrificed. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I believe that Michael Jordan's dad was sacrificed.
Sacrificed by who, I hear you asking? The Jews. He believes that his mom was sacrificed by the Jews to Satan. He thinks they worship Satan. No joke.
Didn't something happen with Tiger Woods?
Yeah.
My mom, these are all Zionist sacrifices that happen. But this is Satan at the end of the day. There's a lot of people that feel like we're at the end of days.
Okay, he threw in a word there that's not super common, Zionist. If you don't know what that means, it's basically just a code word for like a pro-Jewish person, like somebody who believes that Israel should excel. And there's a lot of baggage to it, a lot of like loaded language surrounding the term Zionist that I don't even need to get into, but that's basically what it means. Zion is Israel. If you're a Zionist, then you're pro-Israel. That's basically what it means. Kanye is basically saying that being a Zionist means that you're a Satan worshiper or something. But this is where his mental illness really starts to shine through right here. Wow, I've been going for an hour almost. It's important, though. I feel like this is a really important story I need to finish, and I want to give it justice. I don't want to cut it short due to time constraints. I really want to complete this whole thing, this whole thought. So we're going to keep going, despite the fact that this is really long. This is where Kanye West's mental illness starts to kind of shine through, and his sensitivity about it. Listen to this one.
Hour number 2, uncensored with Ye.
It's basically Alex Jones ending the segment. They're going to a commercial break, and he's doing his little outro here.
Nick Fuentes, I'm your guest host here in Insane Asylum World, because the whole world's crazy. All of us are nuts. This is Twilight Zone 2.0. We will be
Don't
right
just point
back.
at me when you say that.
No, I'm talking about all of us. The whole world's crazy. It is crazy. Everybody's crazy. I believe that. I'm saying the guest host here because these guys are hosting. We'll be right back with hour number 2.
Did you hear what Kanye there said? He said, "Don't point to me when you say that."
We will be
Don't
right
just point
back.
at me when you say that.
Don't you point at me when you say that. He is very sensitive about his mental health. Here's where it gets interesting. Okay, now you can very clearly see a slow progression into complete madness. And it's something he's very obviously sensitive about. Check this one out. This is just a few minutes later.
I look at my phone and they say gays are anti-Semitic. So I said, okay, well, I'm an anti-Semitic. No, you said I'm an anti-Semitic. Get it? You understand what I'm saying?
Okay, what he's saying is he was accused of saying something that's anti-Semitic, so he decided to lean into it and get really anti-Semitic because he was called anti-Semitic. I feel like his logic is completely off the rails here. People called him anti-Semitic because he did something anti-Semitic. If he doesn't want to be accused of being anti-Semitic, then he shouldn't act like that. Is he really not getting this? Like he's saying, do you get it? Do you get it, Kanye? How are you this dense?
You understand what I'm saying? Bring in the clowns. There will be clowns.
I tell you what, let's play that.
Did this dude just start singing to himself out of nowhere? Would you be surprised to find that that's not the first or the last time he sang to himself during this episode?
To have some comments, final comments here. Are you going to push that jet back or you got to get out of here?
I got to get out of here. They already pushed the jet back, tried to stop us from getting here the first time. Nick, can you tell them what?
They already pushed the jet back, try to stop us from getting here. Okay, yeah, this is a totally separate story. I meant to include that. I guess I didn't apparently, but basically his jet had like a depressurizing situation, like an alarm started going off because one of the seals on the door was not working for one reason or another. So they had to like turn the jet around and land at like a landing pad nearby or whatever, a landing strip, so that it didn't depressurize. And Kanye believes that the Jews planned that, orchestrated that to prevent him from talking about them on Alex Jones. This is delusion. This is not, you don't usually face delusion, full-blown paranoid delusion on with bipolar disorder, which Kanye's been diagnosed with. It's not one of the standard things. You can experience a delusion of grandeur, which means you believe yourself to be incredible, the best, the biggest, the strongest, the whatever. That's a delusion of grandeur, but it's not usually paranoid delusions. Now, I happen to, I'm not going to say who it is, but I know somebody that I'm very close to and have been my whole life who has something called schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder is basically schizophrenia mixed with bipolar disorder. They're on the same spectrum, those two conditions are, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I don't know this for sure. I have no place to diagnose Kanye. I don't even know the dude, and I'm not even a psychologist, so this is just complete shot in the dark guess. But it feels like Kanye West might have schizoaffective disorder, a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Now, it's not just a combination of the two. They intertwine with each other. So with schizophrenia, pure schizophrenia, you have these delusions that pop up. Like you believe that you could invent nanotech that could repair your body and keep you alive forever, creating immortality. Or you believe that you could write a cipher that could compress things to like 1,000th of their original size, or you could interpret a language that nobody has ever been able to interpret before. Those types of delusions, right? That's what you get with schizophrenia. But with schizoaffective disorder, this only pops up when you have your emotional high. So bipolar disorder, you jump between mania and depression in cycles. Cycles are different lengths for different people, but the people that I've known that have had bipolar disorder had, say, 6-week cycles. Some people's cycles are as short as 2 or 3 days. They're manic for 3 days straight, can't sleep. It's like they're on coke, running around doing spending sprees. They feel like they're invincible. and then they crash. They're super depressed. They can't handle it anymore. They stay in a dark room for days at a time. They don't eat. They don't do anything. That's the manic depressive stage. Like, they jump from one extreme to the other. With schizoaffective disorder, when they're manic, they start having these delusions, like schizophrenic delusions. Samantha Galantine, I work mental health as a B-A-B-H-C-M-I-I, I think. Schizoaffective disorder can either be bipolar type or depressive type. I see a lot of schizoaffective, and it's hard to work with. Keep up the amazing work. I appreciate that. Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. I'm very close with somebody who has schizoaffective disorder. I don't talk to them anymore. I just don't want to, I don't want to say who it was, but yeah, I've been around that illness my whole life, unfortunately. So anyways, my point is, some of the things Kanye is talking about sound like schizophrenic delusions, but it's not. It's like paranoid delusions, like they're coming after him. They're trying to get him. They're attacking him or whatever. Here's another interesting side effect of schizophrenia, a little-known side effect. You can't always tell left from right. Commonly, if you have schizophrenia, you don't know if you're holding something with your left hand or your right hand. You don't know which hand this is. I wish we could do some kind of a test where we ask Kanye what's in his left hand, just to see. I mean, that wouldn't be a die-hard indication that he has any of this stuff anyways. It would just be an interesting test. If we could get close to him and ask him what's he holding in his left hand, what's he holding in his right hand, just to see, That would be really fascinating. Anyways, the point is, the guy is very clearly mentally ill. Clear as day. I'm sorry, this is not an offensive thing. I don't intend for this to be offensive to him. He's obviously very sensitive about it. He's mentally ill. He needs medicine desperately. I don't know what kind of medicine. Lithium would help with bipolar disorder. That would not necessarily help with schizophrenia. He might need to try Seroquel or Geodon or something like that. I don't know. That some antipsychotic that cuts down on the delusions, because this is too much. This is bad. Check this next one out. This is where his mental illness really starts to become clear.
It doesn't matter how on the spectrum you think I am. I have the right to speak out loud. That is our First Amendment.
You absolutely do. You're right. It's interesting that he said he believes that he's on the spectrum. I assume he means the autism spectrum, because that's usually what people are referring to when they say the spectrum, first of all. Second, you do have a right to speak, absolutely. And I have a right to condemn you as an evil monster for endorsing Hitler. That's my First Amendment right, to say that you're disgusting and I don't want to buy your albums or listen to your music anymore because it's grotesque, the things that you've said and endorsed. We're both using our First Amendment rights. That's what it's all about, baby. Keep acting like the victim as you literally call for the deaths of people. Keep playing the victim card. He's learned well from Republicans, right? Before we continue, since I mentioned Republicans, something else that I was reading about recently when I was dealing with a lot of the reading the Nazi books that I've been reading, something I read about recently, something called the F scale. It's a personality test that was developed by somebody, I forget who, but Theodore Adorno. It was produced in 1947 to measure the authoritarian personality. The personality that kind of produced Hitler, or that would determine if you were likely to be a Hitler supporter in Nazi Germany. Listen to some of the qualifiers or some of the qualities that you would expect to see in somebody who followed Hitler in 1942. Conventionalism, conformity to the traditional societal norms and values of the middle class. Authoritarian submission, a passive notion toward adhering to conventional norms and values. Authoritarian aggression, punishing and condemning individuals who don't adhere to conventional values. Any of this sounding familiar? Putting a high emphasis on religion and ethics. Being very superstitious. Appreciating the optics of power and toughness. Anti-introspection, i.e., rejection of all inwardness, of the subjective, the imaginative, the tender-minded, and of self-criticism. Destructiveness and cynicism, generalized hostility, vilification of the human. projectivity, the disposition to believe that wild and dangerous things go on in the world, the projection outwards of unconscious emotional impulses, and exaggerated concern with sexual goings-on. Is any of this sounding familiar? This is describing the Republican Party to a T, or the MAGA movement more specifically to a T. So let's keep listening to Kanye. He would very obviously score very, very high on the F scale, but that's neither here nor there. Keep listening to what he has to say here.
And it's a shame that you have to be considered to be on the spectrum to have enough courage to speak out loud.
So I guess this is him kind of coming out and saying that his doctor said that he's on the spectrum. I don't know. I assume he's talking about the autism spectrum, right? Because like I said, bipolar and schizophrenia are a spectrum too. Is that the spectrum he's referring to? I don't know.
I do love my family, right? But I looked at every possible outcome. I've practiced Chinese water torture on myself.
Why, I hear you asking? Your guess is as good as mine. You got me. Why practice such a thing on yourself? To what ends? Who knows? Only Kanye knows.
Outcome. I've practiced Chinese water torture on myself. I would like skip along Malibu in front of my house and sing, "When the Clintons come to kill me, how is it going to be? What are they going to do to kill me?" Wait a second. Netton, what do you have to say about this? Netton, don't want to say nothing.
I don't even know what to say to all that, honestly. I really don't. The guy has mental problems. And if he were a woman in this industry, in the music industry, he would have been in a conservatorship 10 years ago. I desperately wanted Britney Spears out of her conservatorship. I didn't feel it was right for her to be in one. And it wasn't right. Kanye needs one. Desperately. It isn't even about his beliefs. It's about shit like that. He is completely gone. Off the rails. A train wreck. If that's not crazy enough for you, at the end or near the end of, the whole thing, he gave us his presidential platform, told us he's running for president in 2024, and wanted us to know what he believes would fix the problems the country faces.
I am not the most knowledgeable Christian, and I'm not the most knowledgeable politician, but I am truthful. I'm nobody's hard.
No, I believe that. What I was trying to get to is, what is your platform? And you text me your platform. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, it starts here with the Bible, and we're going to work through this with our designers. We're going to approach America like Steve Jobs approached Apple.
Oh, yeah. By the way, first of all, this makes absolutely no sense at all. But since he said designer, I do just want to point one thing out. Kanye West is well known for, if nothing else, I mean, aside from his music, he's well known for his work in designing, right? He designs various product lines like shoes. That's why he had to deal with Adidas, and lingerie and clothing, jackets, and all kinds of other stuff. But knock this around the old cashew. Did you ever consider the fact that maybe Kanye is piss poor at designing things? The stuff that he designs look as disjointed, confusing, and ugly as his personality does, but he's so revered in the music industry that people just think that it looks really good. Have you ever seen a pair of Yeezys before? Here's a pair of Yeezy foam runners from Adidas. This is what they were producing. It's basically a Croc with extra holes in it that looks like it was thrown. It looks like a mix of a Croc and a Nerf football. Did anybody consider the possibility that maybe this guy is not good at designing anything at all, and people just like his designs because they liked his music, and that's about as far as it goes? He's not a good designer. He's not good at creating new fashion. Does his fashion catch on? Oh yeah, definitely. Because he's famous already, and people want to be like him. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Keep listening to what he has to say here.
We are the youngest startup in history, but we're the world power because of our military and mainly because of our naval force. And it shows how smart and how powerful Americans are. The engineering, the sheer engineering. We invented Apple.
He's trying to give us his presidential platform. I'm not seeing it here.
We have the strongest military, and now we have to take that same type of sensibility, take it out of Wall Street's hands and give it to the people.
Okay, how are you going to do that? What the hell does this even mean exactly? Take the engineering sensibilities out of the hands of Wall Street and give it to the people. What? What are you talking about? Okay, that's a nice idea. Can you give me a specific plan that you want to put into practice that would do that? Maybe I can skim through the plan and figure out what the he's talking about. I have no idea what he is on about right now.
Engineering mind that created the trams, that made Disney, that made Pixar, that made Lucasfilms, that made Apple. That engineering mind, these minds that we have are going to be brought together to cure America, and then we will influence the rest of the world into higher consciousness and into peace.
And I agree. We were given that birthright, and somehow it's been lost. I want to talk about that.
Dude, I am so lost. I am so incredibly lost about everything. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know how he arrived at these conclusions. I don't even know how he plans to implement any of this. It makes zero sense. Zero. I am so beyond confused by, like, literally everything he said. Just about the only thing that he said coherently in this entire 3-hour interview was, I love Hitler and I'm a Nazi. That's about it. In between all of his bizarre ramblings about the Clintons coming to kill him.
I would like skip along Malibu in front of my house and sing, when the Clintons come to kill me, how is it going to be? What are they going to do to kill me? Wait a second. Netton, what do you have to say about this?
Just because he has mental problems, clear as day, does not excuse all the other stuff that he said. He is an evil monster and deserves to have his legacy destroyed permanently for the things that he's said and done. If he is unaware of what Hitler actually did, I honestly don't care. He deserves it either way. He deserves to have his legacy destroyed permanently for being stupid enough to endorse something so horrific without actually knowing what happened and how things played out. You know, this whole mental illness thing, this isn't new for Kanye. He's always been like this. We just didn't see it before, apparently. If you remember, he famously said back in, 2006 or something like that, George Bush doesn't care about black people. He said that famously on TV. Now, that line on its own doesn't seem that, crazy or that, out there or bizarre or whatever. But I'd be willing to bet, because I hadn't seen this before, I'd be willing to bet you haven't seen this before either. This is the actual line. It wasn't the thing that he said. It was the way that he said it. It was a charity event raising funds for Hurricane Katrina victims. And he was on there with Mike Myers. Kanye West was, and Chris Tucker is about to pop up in a second. Listen to Kanye West and Mike Myers talk about George Bush and Hurricane Katrina and all that stuff on this fundraiser.
The city has changed dramatically, tragically, and perhaps irreversibly. There's now over 25 feet of water where there was once city streets and thriving neighborhoods.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a black family, it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food, and it's been 5 days because most of the people...
Okay, so the things that he's saying are roughly correct, but it's so disjointed and confusing and just a complete train wreck, right? What does this have to do with anything? They're supposed to be raising charity funds for Hurricane Katrina victims. Okay, so this is in no way... nervousness. I mean, maybe there's some nervousness mixed in here, but this is how the guy's head works. This is what's going on in there. This is not about Kanye West being nervous on TV. It's about mental illness. It's been there since day one. How did we not see it? So Mike Myers is just kind of confused by that disjointed array of thoughts that don't go together, but listen to what happens next.
And subtle, but in even many ways more profoundly devastating, is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
That was just out of nowhere. It was just like, that makes no sense at all. I think he's right in some of the things that he said, the things that I can decipher. But what?
The lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
And now, as he says this, watch Mike Myers' face.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call.
In the past few days.
And then there's Chris Tucker, just has no idea. Oh, God, I just love it. I love it to death. Anyways, Kanye's always been like this. How did we not see it before? I just don't know. The fact that the Nazis only had about 20% support and they still managed to do as much damage as they did is terrifying. Absolutely. You know, it's even more terrifying. At no point in time did the Nazi Party ever have more than 37% support. At any point. That's what I read in the book Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Browning earlier today and yesterday. That's just crazy, dude.